1. Popularity can make you seen, but respect makes you remembered. You can trend today and be forgotten tomorrow. You can chase clicks, likes, and applause. But if there's no substance behind the noise, it all fades like smoke. Respect is different. Respect comes from discipline, consistency, and integrity. It's not loud, but it lasts. Attention makes people look. Respect makes people listen. 2. Don't trade your character for clout. Every time you choose image over integrity, you lose a little piece of who you really are. You don't have to compromise your values to be valued. You don't need to become something you're not just to fit in with people who don't even know who they are. Respect comes when your actions match your words, when your soul is more important than your spotlight. 3. Attention is easy, respect is earned. Anybody can get attention. Say something wild, do something reckless, and the cameras will show up. But respect doesn't come cheap. It's earned in silence, when nobody's watching. It's built through showing up when it's hard, staying humble when you win, and standing firm when it's tempting to fold. Attention flashes. Respect builds. 4. The loudest one in the room isn't always the leader. Don't confuse volume with vision. Leadership isn't proven by how many eyes are on you, but by how many lives are better because of you. Real respect isn't begged for. It's built in private through service, through excellence, through the way you treat people when they have nothing to offer you. Attention says, look at me. Respect says, follow me. 1. Don't trade your character for clout. In a world where validation is often measured in followers, where worth is calculated by views, and influence is confused with identity, it's easy to start chasing the wrong things. It's easy to believe that if you're not being seen, you're not succeeding. It's tempting to think that if people aren't clapping, then you must be failing. But there's a quiet truth that doesn't always trend. You can gain the whole spotlight and still lose your soul. You can be celebrated publicly and still be crumbling privately. Because attention is addictive, but it's not always authentic. And clout may get you in the room, but only character can keep you there. The problem with chasing clout is that it's cheap. It's fast food for the ego. It fills you up for a moment, but it doesn't nourish your purpose. It can make you feel full for a season, but leave you spiritually malnourished when the cameras go off and the applause dies down. When you start living for likes, you stop living from love. When you start needing attention, you start neglecting intention. And slowly, quietly, you start trading the eternal for the immediate. You start handing over who you are for what people think. And the tragedy is not just what you lose, it's what you become in the process. Clout is a performance. Character is a promise. One is about perception, the other is about principle. One is fragile and fleeting, the other is tested and timeless. Character doesn't chase the crowd, it carries the crown. It doesn't seek the spotlight, it stands firm in the dark. It's the thing you do when nobody's watching, the thing you say when nobody's listening. The decision you make when there's no reward, just righteousness. Clout wants the platform, character builds the foundation. And the truth is, if you build your life on clout, you're building a castle on sand. But if you build on character, you're building on stone. There's a cost to choosing character, and it's not always obvious. You won't always be the most popular. You won't always be the first picked. You won't always be celebrated, retweeted, or reposted. Sometimes you'll be overlooked. Sometimes you'll be misunderstood. But the reward is deeper than applause, it's peace. It's knowing that you didn't sell your soul for a season of attention. It's knowing that who you are matters more than how many people are watching. And it's knowing that when the noise fades, your name still means something. Your integrity still stands. Your soul is still whole. What happens when your image outgrows your integrity? What happens when you build a name that your character can't carry? You implode. You sabotage your own success. Not because you weren't talented, not because you weren't gifted, but because you weren't rooted. See, clout can carry you to places your character hasn't been tested for. And if you're not anchored in something deeper than public opinion, you'll drift. You'll bend to every trend, sway with every comment, and compromise every conviction just to stay relevant. But relevance without righteousness is emptiness wearing a costume. And sooner or later, the costume comes off. There's a voice inside you that knows better. It's quieter than the culture. It doesn't shout, it whispers, it doesn't flash, it calls. And it says, you don't need to perform to be powerful. You don't need to compromise to be chosen. You don't need to trade who you are to become who they want. That voice is the anchor of your identity, the compass of your calling. And when everything around you is screaming for attention, that voice calls you back to authenticity. It reminds you that you weren't made to be liked, you were made to be light. Not to follow trends, but to set truth. Not to impress the world, but to impact it. Clout is a crowd pleaser. Character is a legacy builder. One is loud and temporary. The other is quiet and eternal. And the dangerous thing about clout is that it never satisfies. You get a taste, and you want more. One viral moment leads to another desperate attempt to stay in the spotlight. One performance leads to another compromise. And before you know it, your life becomes a chase, a treadmill of validation. You're working hard, running fast, but going nowhere, because clout can't fill the hole that only conviction can satisfy. There's a freedom that comes with choosing character over clout, a strength that doesn't depend on likes or views, a peace that doesn't rise and fall with trends. It's the freedom to sleep at night knowing your name wasn't built on manipulation. It's the strength to walk away from rooms that ask you to be someone you're not. It's the peace of knowing that even if the world never applauds you, your work still matters, your presence still speaks, your actions still echo. You don't need the stage to have significance. You don't need the spotlight to have influence. Your value isn't based on your visibility. It's built on your values. And when you start prioritizing your principles over your popularity, something changes. You begin to lead with humility. You begin to serve with sincerity. You begin to love without limits. And the world may not notice right away, but the people who matter will. The ones you're called to reach. The ones your life is meant to touch. Because real impact doesn't come from being famous, it comes from being faithful. Every decision you make is a brick. Every choice is a seed. And you're either building a legacy or building a lie. You're either planting roots of integrity or weeds of insecurity. And when the storm comes, and it always comes, it will reveal what you're made of. The winds of criticism, the rain of failure, the fire of rejection. These things don't destroy character, they expose it. They don't crush true greatness, they refine it. But clout crumbles under pressure, because it was never built to last. It was built for show, not for storms. Look around. There are people who had the fame, but not the foundation. People who had the followers, but not the faith. People who had the hype, but not the heart. And where are they now? Buried beneath the pressure of their own performance, lost in the noise of their own need for validation, forgotten by the same crowd that once cheered for them. Because clout is cruel, it claps for you one day and cancels you the next. But character remains. It weathers the storm, it outlives the trend, it keeps showing up long after the cameras are gone. This world needs less performers and more pioneers, less actors and more anchors, less influencers and more individuals who aren't afraid to be real, who aren't afraid to walk away from what's popular to protect what's right, who don't need an audience to walk in excellence, who don't need attention to know their worth, who don't need to shout to be strong. That's who changes the world. That's who breaks the cycle. That's who carries the torch forward, not the loudest voice in the room, but the truest one. There's a quiet power in authenticity, a deep strength in knowing you're enough without the applause. And the irony is, the more you choose character over clout, the more influence you gain. Not the kind that trends, but the kind that transforms, the kind that doesn't fade, the kind that builds others up instead of tearing yourself down. Because when people see that your name is tied to something real, when they know you won't compromise just to climb, they begin to trust you. They begin to follow you. And they begin to believe that maybe, just maybe, they don't have to perform either. The highest level of leadership isn't about being seen, it's about being steady. It's about being rooted. It's about having the courage to stand alone when necessary. To say no when it would be easier to say yes. To walk away from fast success in pursuit of real substance. That's not weakness, that's wisdom, and it's rare. Because it requires you to delay gratification, to sacrifice short-term applause for long-term peace. But the reward is worth it, not just for what you achieve, but for who you become. Every time you refuse to compromise, you strengthen your core. Every time you say no to clout, you say yes to growth. Every time you choose character, you're declaring to the world and to yourself that your integrity is not for sale, that your calling is bigger than your following, that your life has meaning beyond your metrics. And even if nobody claps, even if nobody reposts, even if nobody notices, you'll know. And that knowing is everything. Because at the end of the day, it won't be the applause that defines you. It won't be the trends that tell your story. It'll be the trail you left behind, the lives you lifted, the values you stood for, the truth you never abandoned, the courage you carried when compromise was calling your name. And most of all, it'll be your character, the invisible force that shaped every visible moment, the unseen foundation that held everything up, the quiet strength that made you unshakable in a world addicted to noise. Let the world chase clout. You chase character. Let them reach for attention. You reach for authenticity. Because when the dust settles, and the lights dim, and the followers disappear, character remains. And in that stillness, you'll know you didn't just survive the culture, you outlasted it. Not because you shouted louder, but because you stood stronger, because you chose the long road over the loud one, the narrow path over the trending one. And because you never forgot, real power doesn't perform, it perseveres. 2. Popularity can make you seen, but respect makes you remembered. In today's world, it's easy to get seen. Say something controversial, post something dramatic, do something outrageous, and boom, you're viral. Your name's everywhere. Your face is on screens. People know you, talk about you, click, comment, and scroll. For a moment, you feel invincible. But here's the truth, nobody's telling you. Being seen isn't the same as being significant. Fame can introduce you, but only respect will sustain you. Popularity can open the door, but only character and consistency will keep it from closing in your face. Because when the lights dim and the crowd moves on, what matters isn't how many people knew your name, it's what they remember about the way you lived. See, popularity is easy. It's often a matter of timing, trends, or technology. One moment of luck or a well-edited post can push someone into the spotlight. But respect? That's different. That's earned. That's built brick by brick over time. It doesn't come through the crowd, it comes through the climb. It comes through the work you put in when no one's clapping, through the choices you make when no one's watching, through the sacrifices you make when no one says thank you. Respect comes from staying grounded in the truth when lies are louder, from staying humble when you're rising, from staying honest when it costs you something. Respect isn't flashy, it's not viral, it's not always cool, but it's lasting. It's the thing that keeps your name clean when rumors rise, the thing that keeps your voice heard even when you're not shouting, the thing that keeps doors opening long after the spotlight has moved on. Because while popularity is borrowed, respect is earned. While fame is loud, respect is quiet. And while attention fades, respect endures. There's something dangerous about a culture obsessed with visibility. When the goal becomes being seen instead of being solid, people start cutting corners. Integrity gets replaced by image. Truth gets replaced by trends. And before you know it, people are building platforms with no foundation. They're creating personas instead of cultivating purpose. They're becoming known for what they do, not who they are. And that's where it all begins to crumble. Because if you're only as good as your last performance, you're never really safe. You're just one mistake away from losing it all. But if your life is built on principles, not popularity, on discipline, not dramathan, you're not just seen, you're respected. Respect isn't something you can demand, it's something you develop. It's not given because you're loud, it's given because you're loyal. Not because you're famous, but because you're faithful. And the people who are truly respected, the ones who are remembered with reverence, aren't always the ones with the biggest followings. They're the ones who showed up when it was hard, who stood up when it wasn't easy, who held on to their values when compromise was the faster path. They're the ones who didn't bend under pressure, who didn't break under criticism, who didn't chase popularity, but chased purpose. There's a difference between being impressive and being impactful. Impressing people might get you compliments, but impacting people changes lives. Popularity might make people talk about you, but respect makes people talk about what you stood for. And the difference lies in how you live when the cameras are off, when the applause dies down, when there's no one around to validate your worth. That's when your real legacy is built. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Not on stage, but in the stillness. Some people live for the moment, others live for the mission. Some people want to be liked, others want to be lasting. You've got to decide. Do you want people to notice you now or remember you forever? Because the choices you make today are shaping the story people will tell tomorrow. And you don't have to be the most famous to be the most impactful. You don't have to be the loudest to be the most respected. Some of the most powerful legacies were built in silence, with no audience, just faith, consistency, and commitment. It's a tragedy to be popular for something that doesn't reflect your purpose, to be known for something that doesn't speak to who you truly are. That's why you can't let the pursuit of popularity pull you away from your principles. The world will tempt you to water down your message, to fit in, to be palatable, to please everyone. But in trying to be everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to yourself. You dilute your power when you try to appeal to everyone, and you lose your identity when your worth depends on public opinion. Respect doesn't come from pleasing the crowd, it comes from standing for something, even when it's unpopular, from speaking the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, from living with discipline, even when it's inconvenient. That's the kind of life that gets remembered. That's the kind of person who leaves a legacy. Not because they were liked by everyone, but because they were real with everyone. Because they lived a life that echoed beyond applause. People may not always agree with you, they may not always celebrate you, but they'll remember how you treated them, how you carried yourself, how you stayed true to what mattered. They'll remember the strength in your silence, the grace in your stance, the courage in your convictions. That's the stuff that outlives trends. That's the stuff that survives culture shifts. Because respect doesn't expire. It grows, it deepens, it multiplies through generations. And long after the noise is gone, long after the lights fade, that respect is still speaking. You've got to be okay with not being the most talked about, if it means being the most trusted. You've got to be willing to be overlooked by the world, if it means being anchored in truth. Because attention is addictive, but it's not always affirming. It can feed your ego but starve your soul. It can lift you up today and leave you empty tomorrow. But respect doesn't abandon you. It doesn't fluctuate with the market. It doesn't leave when your influence dips. It stays, it sustains, it speaks on your behalf when you're not in the room. You weren't made to be a trend. You were made to be a trail, a path, a direction for others to follow. You weren't made to be a moment. You were made to be a movement. And movements aren't built through popularity. They're built through perseverance, through patience, through pain, through the process of doing the right thing over and over again, even when no one is watching. That's where respect is forged. That's where legacy is written. Look at the people you admire most. The ones who left a mark, who changed lives, who shifted the atmosphere. They weren't chasing attention, they were chasing alignment. They weren't focused on being seen, they were focused on being solid. And now, years later, people still speak their names with weight, with gratitude, with reverence. Because their lives weren't just loud, they were meaningful. They didn't just entertain, they elevated. They didn't just exist, they endured. That's what you're called to. Not just to shine, but to stand. Not just to be known, but to be noble. Not just to gather followers, but to grow fruit. Fruit that lasts. Fruit that nourishes others. Fruit that doesn't rot with time. And the only way to produce that kind of fruit is to be deeply rooted in integrity, in purpose, in truth. Because roots go deeper than trends. They're not seen, but they're essential. They're not flashy, but they're foundational. When the storms of life come, and they will come, it won't be your popularity that keeps you steady. It'll be your respect. It'll be the strength of your character, the decisions you made when no one was looking, the sacrifices you embraced when everyone else was cutting corners. That's what holds you up. That's what sets you apart. And that's what makes your life worth remembering. Don't settle for being seen if it costs you being steady. Don't sell your soul for a season of applause. Don't trade your purpose for a platform that can't hold your weight. Choose respect. Choose real. Choose the path that's less traveled but more rooted. Because when the dust settles and the hype fades and the world moves on to the next big thing, you'll still be standing. Not because you were the most visible, but because you were the most valuable. Because while others were performing, you were planting. While others were trending, you were transforming. While others were chasing noise, you were building something that speaks in silence. And that's the power of a life built on respect. It doesn't shout, it shines. It doesn't impress, it impacts. It doesn't just show up, it stands tall. Quiet, consistent, resilient, remembered. 3. Talent may get you in the room, but discipline keeps you there. In every industry, in every dream worth chasing, there comes a point where talent stops being enough. You can be the most gifted, the most charismatic, the most naturally skilled person in the room, but if you don't have discipline, you won't stay in that room for long. Talent may open the door, but it's discipline that keeps it from closing behind you. Because talent can get you noticed, but only discipline earns you respect. Talent can give you a head start, but discipline is what gets you to the finish line. There are countless people who started out shining, people who lit up a stage, aced the interview, turned heads with what looked like effortless brilliance. But over time, you watched their light dim. Not because they weren't gifted, not because they didn't have potential, but because they didn't cultivate the consistency required to carry that gift. They relied on talent, but didn't respect the process. They chased the performance, but neglected the preparation. And preparation is what separates the ones who fade from the ones who endure. Discipline is the difference maker. It's the unseen grind that shows up in every outcome. It's the early mornings when no one is watching. It's the late nights when everyone else has gone home. It's the commitment to excellence, not once or twice, but daily, over and over again. Because greatness isn't built in moments of inspiration, it's built in moments of repetition. When you do the right thing even when you don't feel like it, when you practice when no one is clapping, when you study when it would be easier to scroll, when you push through the pain instead of pulling back. Discipline isn't glamorous. It's not always exciting. It doesn't usually go viral, but it always pays off. Because discipline is what turns potential into performance. It's what turns ideas into impact. It's what turns a moment of greatness into a lifetime of legacy. Talent might be the seed, but discipline is the water, the sunlight. The daily cultivation that allows that seed to grow into something strong, rooted, and lasting. There are people who are less talented than you, doing more than you, not because they're better, but because they're more disciplined. They don't have more potential, they just have more patience. They don't have more brilliance, they just have more boundaries. They say no when it's easier to say yes. They focus when distractions call. They work when others wait. That's discipline. It's not just about working hard, it's about working consistently. And consistency compounds. Little by little, it adds up. Slowly, then suddenly. The challenge is that talent gets praised, but discipline gets overlooked. People see the performance, but they don't see the preparation. They see the results, but they don't see the repetitions. And if you don't understand that, you'll start thinking something's wrong with you when the results take time. You'll get discouraged because your gift isn't giving back fast enough. But gifts grow slowly. And the only thing that will keep you from giving up on the gift is discipline. Discipline is choosing purpose over preference. It's choosing progress over comfort. It's doing what you said you'd do long after the emotion you said it in is gone. Discipline is what shows up when motivation doesn't. When the hype wears off, when the feeling fades, that's when discipline kicks in. It's the system that keeps you steady when everything else is shaky. It's the structure that holds your dreams when life feels chaotic. People admire talent, but they follow discipline, because discipline inspires trust. You know what to expect. You know that person is going to show up, give their best, honor their word. That consistency builds a reputation that can't be shaken. That kind of dependability is rare in a world full of flakes. And if you can be the one who delivers not once, not twice, but repeatedly, you will rise. Because reliable always outlasts remarkable. Show me someone you can count on, and I'll show you someone who will always have a seat at the table. Discipline isn't about perfection. It's not about being rigid or robotic. It's about being intentional. It's about knowing what you want and aligning your life to support that vision. It's about building habits that make success inevitable and not occasional. Because discipline doesn't just affect your work, it affects your mind, your confidence, your peace. When you're disciplined, you stop living at the mercy of your moods. You stop being reactive and start being proactive. You stop chasing control and start creating it. Some people spend their whole lives waiting to feel ready, waiting to be inspired, waiting for the perfect time. But discipline doesn't wait. Discipline acts. Discipline builds the habit first and lets the feeling catch up later. It knows that progress rarely feels good at the start. That excellence often looks like boredom. That breakthroughs are often dressed in repetition. And that's where many people miss it. They chase the dopamine instead of the development. They want fireworks but aren't willing to strike the match. Discipline is making your actions match your ambition. It's not enough to want the dream, you have to build the structure to sustain it. Because a big dream without discipline is just a fantasy. It'll exhaust you, frustrate you. Eventually, it'll break you. But a dream aligned with discipline becomes a calling. It becomes a mission. And mission gives your life meaning that no amount of money or fame ever could. There are people out there right now who are dreaming of doing what you've already been given the gift to do, but they don't have your opportunity. They don't have your access. They don't have your platform. Don't waste that by being casual with your calling. Don't squander what others are praying for because you don't feel like working today. Discipline says, I honor the gift by showing up for it. I respect the calling by preparing for it. I protect the purpose by practicing for it daily. Success isn't about what you do once, it's about what you do repeatedly. Anybody can have a good day. Anybody can show up once and impress people. But can you do it again and again and again? That's the question. Because excellence isn't an act, it's a habit. It's not just what you do, it's who you are. It's woven into the fabric of your choices, into how you manage your time, into how you talk to yourself, into how you handle setbacks. That's where greatness is formed, in the small decisions, done consistently over time. Life will give you moments that test your discipline. Days when quitting looks easier than continuing, when compromise feels smarter than commitment, when distraction seems more enjoyable than direction. And in those moments, you'll have to choose who you want to be. Not who you feel like being, but who you are becoming. Because every time you choose discipline, you're not just doing the task, you're shaping your identity. You're reinforcing your values. You're proving to yourself that you can be trusted with more. And here's the irony. The more disciplined you become, the more freedom you experience. Because discipline creates order, and order creates peace. When you're disciplined, you don't have to panic about deadlines you've prepared. You don't have to fear failure, you've trained. You don't have to fake confidence, you've earned it. That's the gift of discipline. It removes the chaos. It replaces anxiety with assurance. It builds a foundation that can't be shaken by circumstance. People will often say, "You're so lucky." But luck is just discipline over time, finally getting noticed. Luck is consistency meeting opportunity. You don't rise by chance, you rise by choice. Day after day, hour after hour, one decision at a time. And the beauty of that is this: you don't have to wait for anyone to give you permission. You don't need a stage, a mic, or a following. You just need a standard, a non-negotiable, a decision that you are going to be excellent even if no one sees it, even if no one applauds it, even if no one understands it. Because eventually, they will. People notice discipline, even if they don't say it out loud. They see who's consistent, who's sharp, who's focused, and eventually, they can't ignore it. Because the world is hungry for people who can be trusted, who can deliver, who don't fold under pressure. And if you become that persona, if you make discipline your superpower, then you won't just get in the room. You'll get invited back, again and again. You'll become essential, unshakable, irreplaceable. So if you've got talent, tooth it, hone it, sharpen it, but don't rely on it. Build the discipline that allows it to thrive. Because talent is a gift, but discipline is a decision. And it's the decision you make every day that determines the future you'll build.